Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Talking Cardboard, a channel all about reviews, playthroughs, top 5, and top 10 lists for any game made out of cardboard. In today's video, I'm going through my top 5 favorite board games that blew my socks off. Can you believe it? Let's get started. So what does this mean? Top 5 favorite board games that blew my socks off? Well, actually, I'm bringing you 6 games today with one honorable mention, but these are games that I've played recently that I didn't really think too much about before playing, but then after playing, I was really surprised at how much I liked them. So that is what today's video is all about, are my favorite games that, like I said, just really surprised me. For one reason or another, I wasn't extremely excited to get these tabled, but after I did, got a few plays of it in, I was just really impressed with the gameplay and everything that these games had to offer. So first things first, like I said, my honorable mention for today's list, I guess number 6 if you will, is a brand new game called Harmonies. Harmonies is a tile placement game that it just looks too family friendly, too lightweight, doesn't really look like a lot with it, but I got a recommendation actually from the comment section below in one of our other videos from one of our viewers to try it out. And after I did, I was just really impressed with the gameplay. Harmonies, despite the artwork, although it is beautiful, it's really pretty art, everything, the tiles are chunky, nice quality, everything looks great on the board. Despite that, I just thought it would be too simple for my liking, and I was wrong. It's definitely a game that brings more to the table than meets the eye. It's kind of like in Azul or any other tile placement game out there where you are trying to collect tiles from the center of the table, place them on your player board in different configurations to try to complete these contracts essentially. Or in Harmonies, you're trying to attract animals to these different environments on your board to score points. Whoever has the most points at the end of the game wins, but it does definitely have some depth and layers to it. And like I said, different configurations of tiles. That is where the complexity in this game really comes to the forefront, where you are looking at the center of the table at all these different animals that require different setups and configurations of tiles in order to attract them to your board. And the puzzly nature of this game is really fun. A fantastic gameplay. It really hurts the brain, and so it provides for a lot of strategy and then a lot of tactical options. And I just really like how this all came together with not only the configuration of the tiles, but you are building them upward and outward, so it's a 3D environment, and trying to best put those together to attract these animals for victory points. Once you attract an animal to your board, you are placing cubes on top of some of the stacks of tiles, so those tiles can no longer be triggered. Other tiles that are attached to those stacks can be triggered, but you have to be careful which animals you're attracting when, because they actually take up space on your player board in their environment. So that's another added layer to the puzzle all in itself. So the 3D element, the tile placement, the configurations, the fact that the animals actually take up space on your board, so you're trying to pick the correct animals at the opportune moment to not block yourself out of scoring even more victory points for that. So that is Harmonies. All right, to my number 5 on the list is a very difficult game to find at the current moment. It's a game that I just happened to stumble across, picked it up. I've heard many people enjoying the heck out of it, but it's a very, very simple game. And again, common theme here, some of these games just looked too simple for a game that I might enjoy. I've got about 250 games in my personal collection back here that are more tried and true to what I enjoy in a typical game. A lot of that typically has to do with heavy strategy games that last upwards of 2 to 3 hours, sometimes more. And some of these lighter games just don't typically appeal to me as much anymore. But when I see a game, when I see really high praise and comments on a game that are fun for family and for party settings, sometimes I pick it up to give it a try in those settings. And my number 5 is Flip 7. And Flip 7 definitely did that for me, brought it to the table with multiple groups at this point, with my family, with groups of gamers and non-gamers, and it just went over very, very well. I was very surprised by how well everybody accepted it. But in Flip 7, it's pretty much just blackjack, but in board game form. So you are trying to score points, you are saying hit or stay if you want to keep a card, or keep the points that you have, or hit for another card, but the whole point of this game and what makes it more of a push your luck and very stressful is that there are cards numbered 1 through 12 in the deck, and the higher the value card, the more copies of that card is in the deck. So for example, there are 12 12s, 11 11s, 10 10s. There's only 1 1, and there's actually 1 0 in the deck as well. But on your turn, you are simply hitting for another card or staying. And if you hit and there's a duplicate card that you hit with that you already have in front of you on the table, then you bust and you get 0 points for the round. So very, very simple. There are other special unique cards that have powers on it that you can play onto other players to try to mess them over with their plan to score the most points, but you just keep hitting or staying, and once everybody either busts or stays for that round, you count up the points that you have in front of you, you tally that up, and then you go on to the next round, and the first player to get to 200 or more points triggers the last round of the game, and whoever's left with the most points at the end is the winner. So very, very simple. If you like blackjack or that idea of gambling, but you don't like to, spend your money on it or waste money at the casino, then Flip 7 is definitely a more family-friendly points variant on blackjack. So definitely give Flip 7 a try. All right, and my number 4 game on the list is another really light, almost family weight game where it's just a card game with one deck of cards, again, just like in Flip 7. But in this game, it's more about set collection to gain points. And there's also an element of push your luck a little bit as well. But it's got to be the smallest game in my collection. And this is Sea Salt and Paper. Like I said, Sea Salt and Paper, it is just one deck of cards. And you are either grabbing cards off the draw piles or out of the discard pile and bringing it into your hand. And when you get a pair of cards, kind of like in Go Fish, you can choose to play that pair down in front of you for a special ability. Whether it's drawing more cards off the deck or stealing cards from another player, and you are trying to create these sets of cards, sometimes a run of cards or a set or multiple sets of cards to gain points, and as soon as you get to 7 points in a round, you can call for the end of the round immediately. But where the push your luck comes into play with Sea Salt and Paper is that you can call for a last chance where everybody else at the table gets one more turn to try to beat your score. And if they can't, then they get much fewer points. They only get to count up the most of any one color of card in front of them and score points for 1 point per card. They don't get to score the full amount of points that they would have otherwise with the pairs and different sets of cards that they lay down in front of them. So again, nice, light, family weight, very simple game at the core, but provides a lot of strategy and tension and push your luck and trying to build up a hand of points faster than the other players can. So that is Sea Salt and Paper. All right, and now with my number 3 game, we are finally getting into heavier strategy games, and this one is kind of a love it or hate it game. It has some great reception out there online from other reviews, but also has some lackluster reviews out there as well. Definitely, like I said, a love it or hate it style game, but this is one of the newest games by Leader Games and designer Cole Worley, and this is Arcs. So like I said, Arcs is kind of a medium to heavyweight strategy game that is set in space, and the core mechanism in this is trick-taking with cards. You are trying to, essentially, it's kind of a variant or a twist on a trick-taking where you're playing cards of a certain suit down to the board. Other players can either follow or not follow the suit depending on what they are doing. If you follow the suit, you typically get a better bonus for more actions with that particular suit. There are different actions you can do with that. If you don't follow suit, you get less actions. So there's definitely a little bit of a trick-taking element, not in true trick-taking fashion, but definitely has that feel to it. And you are going around the map trying to area control, build different spaceports, different colonies, get cards that give you special abilities. And what is really unique also in Arcs is that you aren't scoring the goals and each and every one of the goals every single round. There are players that can play specific cards to essentially claim a goal for that round, and whoever has done the best with that goal during the round scores points. And it's played over a set number of rounds. Each round, like I said, there are variable goals that are scoring. You're trying to fulfill those goals to score points, and it's just a lot of tension, a lot of area control, moving around, a lot of player interaction. But like I said, what I really like about Arcs is that the core mechanism that drives it all is that variant on trick-taking. I'm typically not a huge fan of trick-taking games in the general sense, but the twist that Arcs brings to the table with more of kind of the action selection element with the trick taking, and the fact that you don't necessarily have to follow suit. You can pretty much play any card you want, is just a lot of fun to try to crunch and try to strategize with, try to figure out the best strategy in your mind with the hand that you are dealt. Sometimes you are dealt an inopportune hand that you have to just kind of deal with and do the best you can with that. But the better you can play the cards out with what your opponents are doing, the more actions you'll get. So it's a game all about trying to get more optimal actions and try to not get the suboptimal moves for each of your turns. So that is pretty much Arcs in a nutshell. If that sounds interesting to you, like I said, if you're not shying away from the medium to heavier strategy game and you like the idea of trick taking, driving the actions you can do in this space combat, a lot of player interaction style of game, then Arcs is definitely for you. All right, and now on to my top 2 favorite board games that blew my socks off. And without getting too far forward here, I did want to say, if you enjoy the content you see here on the channel, consider subscribing. We really do appreciate it. And leave comments below with some of your favorite games that blew your socks off, because some of the titles I may have not have played before, but if you suggest them to me, I will be sure to track them down and get them played. Because like I said here, these were all surprise hits for me. So on to my number 2. It is by far the heaviest game on this list, by one of my favorite designers of all time, Stefan Feld, his newest game actually that just came out recently. But the reason why I was hesitant on it is it just looked overly complex, overly heavy, overly ambitious for a typical Stefan Feld design. I have multiple Stefan Feld games in my collection and love most of what he does, so shame on me for not believing in him in this design. But like I said, it just looked overly ambitious, really big, very complex, and that's what kind of turned me off from even wanting to try it in the first place. But my number 2, Stefan Feld here, Civolution. Civolution, yes. If you've seen anything about this game online, the first thing you'll notice is how gigantic the player boards are with multiple different actions. There are like 22 different actions, 15 of which are upgradable 2 different times. You can upgrade to tier 2 and tier 3. So there are a lot of different technologies that you can pretty much upgrade, but this is, like the name suggests, it's a civilization game, but you are taking on the role of a deity that is trying to upgrade the best civilization you can by pushing and pulling levers and pressing buttons and just trying to create the best civilization possible for the most amount of victory points by the end of the game. In Civolution, you've got tribes that are on the board. You are trying to produce resources, collect the resources to then try to play cards in front of you with different technologies. The cards have different special abilities. The better you upgrade the card column in front of you, the more points you get at the end of the game for that. Like I said, you can move tribes around, you can procreate for more tribes on the board, you can explore. There's just so many things you can do. It's definitely a sandbox style game where you can pretty much do whatever you want, but you are just trying to formulate the best plan possible to get the most amount of victory points with that. There's also another separate board with goals each round. So you've got your own personal goals that you're trying to go after to get points for that, but you also have the round goal for that round that all the players are trying to be the best player in that goal for the most amount of points. You have a deck of events that will change the weather, and depending on if the weather is getting warmer or colder, that'll affect the main board and the players with that as well. So you're trying to plan for the weather changes, for the event changes, for the different goals. You're trying to explore on the board, move across the map, procreate to get more tribe members. You're trying to feed your tribe to keep them alive, and there's just so many things going on. But what I like most about Civolution, even though that it is a very complex game, it's around like a 4.2 out of 5 complexity rating on BoardGameGeek.com, for example. So it's pretty high up there, but I like that the personal player board is laid out in a way to simplify it. You have columns of actions on your player board where each action in that column has similarities with the other actions in that column. So that really helps present it in a way that's a little bit more digestible and manageable. But with that, what I really enjoy, like in another game by Stefan Feld, Castles of Burgundy, this game is just driven by dice. At the start of your turn, you are rolling out 6 dice, you are placing them on your player board, and then you can use pairs of dice, so 2 dice per action, to carry out these actions. And then if you get low on your dice or run out of dice, you can take a reset action to re-roll your dice again, and then try to best use the die rolls you get with carrying out more actions on that next turn. So I really like how simple it is with, these are the dice I have to work with. I use 2 dice to do an action. Those dice are gone out of that round, and then I just keep moving forward. But there are a lot of moving parts to this, but it is laid out in a way structurally that makes a lot of sense. So I would say after your first couple plays, you're going to start to understand it a little bit, but for sure by your 3rd and 4th play, this game will really start to sing, and you'll be able to really know if this is a game for you after those first couple plays, once you start becoming more familiar with the overall engine and how the game really ticks. So that is Civolution. All right, and the number 1 game on my list that really blew my socks off, I actually don't have it here to show because it is just that popular of a game in my game group. It's at John's house from Talking Cardboard. He requested to keep it because that's how much he's been liking it, and we've been getting a ton of different groups to the table to play this game. It's another simpler, almost family weight or party style game, and like I said, anytime I say family weight or lighter or party style game, it really turns me off without me even giving it a chance. But this is one of those games where there's hidden information, there's deduction. It's definitely a big party when you are bringing this game to the table, and I will place a screenshot of it right here, and that is Bomb Busters. Bomb Busters, fantastic. I will say it doesn't play as well at 2 or 3 players, but if you have a solid group of 4 or 5 players, this game plays up to 5, then this game really sings. In Bomb Busters, you have a Scrabble-like board with blue wire tiles that are facing you in ascending order. The tiles are numbered 1 through 12. Each of the numbers of tile has 4 copies of it in the entire pile, and you are trying your best to find another wire of that same number on somebody else's board, but you can't see what their wires are. If you can find, like let's say I have a number 4 wire here, and if you can find where another 4 is, you can point at that tile on another player's board. If you're correct, you both get to lay them down in front of you. It is a successful cut, but if you are incorrect, they get to place a tile in front of their board showing what number that really was. Your bomb ticks 1 tick closer to exploding. And if for some reason you accidentally cut the red wire, then you automatically lose, everything blows up, and the game is completely over. It sounds very simple. It sounds kind of dumb on the surface, to be real honest, but what I really enjoy about it is that the meta game starts coming out. You can really start figuring out as you get better in this game on how to find those wires. And then the fact that it's got 66 different missions in the box, and each of the missions gets a little bit harder, a little bit more complex, adds other elements to the game. There are boxes, kind of like in a legacy game, that you get to open as you get further and further in the missions throughout the game. You get to open other boxes for more content. And I will say that the first handful of missions are just too introductory and were kind of boring for me. But as we got to the later missions and started opening boxes with more content, this game turned away from just a simple kind of guess a wire type of party style game to a more complex strategy game that I really appreciate. Fully cooperative. It really feels cooperative. Nobody can quarterback the game at all and tell other people what to do because you don't know all the information. And I love the deduction elements in this game with the cooperative nature and the fact that you are adding all these other twists and elements to the game to make it more complex and more strategic. And it's really fun when you can cut all the wires successfully and win as a team. So that is Bomb Busters. So that is it for my list here today of technically my top 6 games that blew my socks off. Was not expecting much out of any of these titles, but they all really surprised me, and all of these games I will be keeping in my collection. They are all that great. They're all fantastic games, and all games that I would recommend to all of you to try. And as always, like the video, leave comments below with some games that you were not really considering playing, and then when you tried them, ended up enjoying them a lot. Would love to see those comments down below. And until next time, you all have a great day and have fun gaming.